My name is Iris Tremaine, and I just turned 18. At my birthday party last night, my dad pulled me aside and whispered, "When this is over, you're going to sign some papers for Uncle Wade. Just a formality." I smiled. I nodded. Then I walked into the kitchen, opened my laptop, and quietly transferred my entire multi-million-dollar inheritance from my grandparents into an irrevocable trust, just as a precaution. The next morning, my parents and my younger sister found out that the cabin, the savings, the investments, everything was locked behind a legal wall they couldn't touch. My dad turned white. My uncle, who had already signed a deal to sell property he never owned, called a lawyer. But before I tell you what happened next, let me take you back 6 years, to a summer at Cedar Lake, when my grandfather said something I didn't fully understand until the night before my birthday. The summer I turned 12, my grandfather Harold Tremaine picked me up in his truck and drove me 40 minutes to Cedar Lake. The cabin sat back from the water, surrounded by white pines so tall they blocked the afternoon sun. The porch sagged on one side. The screen door didn't latch right. It smelled like wood smoke and old books and something sweet I could never quite name. "Grab the other end," Grandpa said, lifting a fence rail. We spent the morning replacing 3 rotted posts along the south side. He didn't rush me. He showed me how to check for soft spots by pressing my thumb into the grain. If it gives, it's done. Inside, Grandma Vivian had iced tea and sandwiches waiting on the kitchen table, the one Grandpa built himself the year they got married. She was reading on the porch when I came out, and she patted the chair beside her. We sat and watched the lake until the light turned gold. "This cabin stays in the family," Grandpa told me that evening, wiping sawdust off his hands. "But family isn't always blood, Iris. Family is whoever shows up." I was 12. I thought he was being poetic. He wasn't. That whole summer, I came back to Cedar Lake every weekend. I learned where the water heater leaked, which window stuck, how to bleed the radiator in October. Grandma taught me to organize the bookshelves by color because it made the room feel warmer. I didn't know then that my grandfather was already talking to a lawyer about exactly this place and exactly me. Back home in Ridgemont, the air was different. Our house was fine. 3 bedrooms, a yard that needed mowing, a garage my dad Greg used as an office for his building supply store. Fine. Not warm, just fine. My sister Kelsey had the bigger bedroom, freshly redecorated with lavender walls and a desk lamp that cost more than my entire bookshelf. My room still had the carpet from the previous owners. At dinner one night, my dad brought up the cabin. "Dad's place is just sitting there losing value," Greg said, cutting his steak. "Property taxes alone are killing us. We should sell it, reinvest." "Grandpa said the cabin stays in the family," I said. Greg laughed. Not a mean laugh. Worse. A dismissive one. "You were 12, Iris." He was being nice. The conversation moved on to Kelsey's debate trophy. I had won the district science fair 2 weeks earlier. The ribbon was still in my backpack. After dinner, I found a glossy flyer half hidden under a grocery list on the counter. Ridgeline Development. Lakefront lots, premium prices, now acquiring. There was a handwritten phone number in the margin that wasn't my dad's handwriting. I put it back exactly where I found it and went upstairs, thinking about Grandpa's kitchen table. About Grandma setting my sandwich without asking what I wanted, because she already knew. About someone downstairs measuring my grandparents' home in dollar signs. Grandpa Harold died 2 years later, when I was 14. The funeral was on a Tuesday. Gray sky, damp grass, folding chairs that sank into the lawn. I sat in the second row holding his handkerchief, blue plaid, frayed at the edges, smelling faintly of pine. At the reception, I noticed Greg and his brother Wade standing by the dessert table. Not eating. Talking low. Wade had a folder tucked under his arm. I caught one sentence: "We should move on this before probate gets complicated." They were talking about the cabin at the funeral. I said nothing. I was 14. I had no power and no idea that my grandfather had already accounted for this exact moment. 2 years later, Grandma Vivian got sick in March and was gone by June. She held my hand the last time I visited, her grip surprisingly firm. "The cabin is yours, Iris," she whispered. "Don't let them take it. Promise me." "I promise, Grandma." She squeezed once and closed her eyes. After her funeral, Greg sat at the kitchen table and said to my mom, "Now we can finally sort out the property." He said it with relief, like something heavy had lifted. That same evening, Wade called. I heard Greg pacing in the garage. "Yeah, no, I agree. Let's get it moving." I was standing in the hallway holding a glass of water, and something settled in my chest like a stone. My grandmother's death wasn't a loss to them. It was a clearance. I didn't cry that night. I made a different kind of decision. I just didn't know how to act on it yet. Between 16 and almost 18, the cabin became my quiet rebellion. Every Saturday morning, I drove out to Cedar Lake in the used Honda I bought with babysitting money. I patched the porch screen. I replaced the weather stripping on the back door. I swept pine needles off the roof because Grandpa had taught me that's how leaks start. At home, the conversation shifted. The cabin stopped being Grandpa's place and started being the family property. Wade showed up more often, every other Sunday, sometimes with manila folders, sometimes with a laptop open to real estate listings. I tried once. What about Grandma's wish? She wanted me to keep it. Denise put down her fork gently, the way she did before correcting Kelsey's homework. Your grandma was emotional at the end, sweetie. This is business. Business. That was the word they used for everything that used to be love. One November afternoon, alone at the cabin, I was clearing out the hall closet when I found a sealed envelope behind a stack of old quilts. My name on the front in Grandma Vivian's handwriting. Inside, a single business card. Margaret Caldwell, attorney at law. Below her name, in small print, Tremaine Family Trust. My hands shook, not from fear, but from recognition. Grandma had left this here for me to find. She knew I'd be the one cleaning closets. Not Greg. Not Wade. Me. 3 months before my 18th birthday, Margaret Caldwell called me first. Thursday evening, I was doing calc homework when my phone lit up with an unknown local number. Iris, this is Margaret Caldwell. I was your grandparents' attorney. I need to speak with you before your birthday. There are things you need to know, and there isn't much time. The following Saturday, I went to her office downtown. She was in her late 50s, silver-haired, reading glasses on a chain. Her office smelled like old paper and coffee. Your grandparents hired me 6 years ago, she said. They established an irrevocable trust, the cabin, a savings account, and an investment portfolio. Total value approximately $2.1 million. You are the sole beneficiary. The title to the cabin was recorded under the trust at the county recorder's office 6 years ago. Your father doesn't know that. She slid a document across the desk with my name on the second line. Why didn't they tell him? Margaret paused. Your grandfather said, and these are his words, "My sons will sell that cabin before the funeral flowers wilt." The room was quiet. I stared at the paper. There's something else, she said. Someone has been making inquiries at the county recorder's office about the cabin's title within the last month. I started paying closer attention after that. Not suspiciously. Just quietly. The next Sunday, Wade came for dinner and afterward he and Greg disappeared into the garage. The door was open just a crack. Enough to hear. Wade's voice, "I already signed the purchase agreement with Ridgeline for $450, but we need the title clean before closing." Greg, how do we get it clean? Quit claim deed. Dad's gone, Mom's gone. We're the legal heirs. We quit claim the property to ourselves, record it, and sell. Is that legal? It's a standard real estate transfer between heirs. Nobody's going to question it. A pause. Then Greg, quieter. What about Iris? My chest tightened. Wade's answer came fast, like he'd already rehearsed it. She's 17, Greg. She can't do anything. And by the time she's 18, the sale goes through. Done deal. She'll be upset. She'll get over it. We'll give her 50 grand for college. She should be grateful. I stepped back from the garage door. My hands were cold. Wade had already signed a purchase agreement, $450,000, with a development company for a cabin he didn't own, on land held in a trust he didn't know existed. That night, I texted Margaret 2 words, "They're accelerating." Her reply came in 3 minutes. I expected that. Come see me Saturday. We'll prepare everything you need. Saturday, Margaret's office. She laid out the timeline on a legal pad. The cabin title is already under the trust. If Wade files a quitclaim deed, the county recorder should reject it because the chain of title won't match. But if he submits additional documentation, an affidavit of heirship, maybe a falsified death certificate, he could create what's called a cloud on title. That won't give him ownership, but it could tie the property up in litigation for a year or more. So I have to act first. You have to act on time. She tapped the calendar. The moment you turn 18, you're a legal adult. You can formally accept the role of successor beneficiary. Once you sign, I file a lease pendens, a public notice of legal interest, at the county recorder's office first thing the next morning. That freezes the title. Nobody can record anything against it. Should I tell my parents? Margaret took off her glasses. Your grandfather specifically asked me to protect you, Iris. Not to negotiate with them. I drove home. Greg was in the kitchen, cheerful. Good news, kiddo. I'm throwing you a birthday party. Whole family. Saturday night. It's a big one. 18, he smiled. Denise smiled. Even Kelsey clapped. I smiled too. My dad was planning my birthday party. My uncle was planning to sell my grandmother's cabin. And I was sitting at the kitchen table smiling, because in 9 days I was going to let them think everything was going exactly according to their schedule. 5 days before my birthday, Denise sat down next to me on the couch, using her Let's Talk Like Adults voice. Soft. Practiced. Slightly rehearsed. She explained the property taxes, the insurance, the repairs. She mentioned Greg's struggling business and a college fund for both me and Kelsey. Grandma wanted me to keep it. A flash of impatience moved across her face, quickly smoothed over. Your grandma was very sentimental at the end. Sentiment doesn't pay property taxes. Greg walked in right on cue. I wondered if they'd planned it. I've already talked to a buyer, he said. Good price, fair deal. Who's the buyer? He blinked. A development company. Wade knows them. What company? A longer pause. Ridgeline something. They're reputable. I'll think about it, I said. Greg patted my shoulder. That's my girl. He walked away satisfied, like he'd just closed a negotiation. That night, Kelsey knocked on my door. She sat on the edge of my bed picking at a thread on the comforter. Mom and Dad keep talking about the cabin after I'm supposed to be asleep. They sound different. Like they're excited, but also nervous. I pulled the blanket over her feet. Don't worry about it, Kels. 3 days before my birthday, Uncle Wade showed up unannounced. He caught me in the driveway, casual clothes, big smile, leaning against his car like he'd just happened to be in the neighborhood. Wade was a real estate agent. Nothing he did was accidental. We sat on the front steps. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. The lake lot is worth $450 just for the land, he said. I can get us a deal with a buyer I trust. Fast close, clean paperwork. And what do I get? $50,000 cash for college. I let the number sit in the air between us. 50 out of 450? Wade smiled like I'd said something cute. You're 18, Iris. 50 grand is a lot of money for someone your age. Whose name is on the deed, Uncle Wade? The smile froze. Just for a second. A flicker behind the eyes. Then it was back. Your grandparents. But they're gone now. Passes to your dad and me as next of kin. That wasn't how it worked. I knew it. He should have known it. He sold houses for a living. But he was counting on me not knowing. I'll think about it, I said again. Wade stood, brushed off his jeans. Don't overthink this one, Iris. Opportunities like this don't wait. He drove away, and before he'd even reached the end of the street, he was on the phone. I could see his mouth moving through the driver's window. That night, I texted Margaret again. They're accelerating. She replied, stay the course. 3 more days. The night before my birthday, I drove to the cabin alone. Cedar Lake sat flat and dark under a half moon, the pines along the bank like cutouts against the sky. I parked in the gravel patch Grandpa had leveled himself, walked up the porch steps, the second one still creaking, and sat in the chair beside the one that used to be his. Margaret had sent the full document package by email. The acceptance of successor beneficiary form. The beneficiary designation confirmation. A 1-page summary of the trust terms. Everything formatted, flagged with sticky tabs, ready for my signature. At midnight, I read each document twice. Then I closed my laptop and listened to the lake. Grandpa used to sit right here and say, "Patience isn't weakness, Iris. It's timing." I always thought he was talking about fishing. The tears came without warning. Not a collapse. A quiet overflow I let happen. I cried because I wished this were different. I wished my dad had been the kind of man who would have taken me fishing at this lake instead of calculating its resale value. I wished my mom had asked me what I wanted instead of telling me what was practical. I wished I didn't have to sign a legal document at midnight to protect myself from the people who were supposed to protect me. But wishes don't hold up in court. Trust documents do. I wiped my face, locked the cabin, drove home, and set my alarm for 11:45 p.m. In 6 hours, I would turn 18. In 7, my family would find out the cabin was never theirs to take. At 11:50 p.m., I opened my laptop and connected to the video call. Margaret appeared in her home office, reading glasses on, a stack of papers lit by a desk lamp. "Ready?" she asked. "Ready." She walked me through it precisely. I signed the acceptance of successor beneficiary form, a single page confirming I was formally receiving the trust my grandparents had created. From that moment forward, every decision about the trust assets ran through me and Margaret as co-decision makers. First thing tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., I'll file a lease pendens at the county recorder's office. Once it's recorded, no one can sell, transfer, or encumber the title while it's active. What if they've already filed something? Then whatever they filed will be flagged. The chain of title will show the trust recorded 6 years ago, not your father. Any conflicting document gets kicked back. I looked at the signed paper in my hand, my name in ink, my grandparents' names printed above mine. Margaret's voice softened just slightly. "This isn't a trick, Iris. This is your grandfather's last gift. You just had to be old enough to accept it." The clock on my laptop read 12:03 a.m. Across town, in the kitchen of a rented duplex, Wade Tremaine was printing documents. I pieced this together later from what the county clerk told Margaret and what Greg eventually admitted. While I was signing upstairs, Wade was printing a quitclaim deed, a one-page form that transfers property rights without any warranty of ownership. Legitimate when used correctly. Criminal when the person signing it has no rights to transfer. He called Greg at 11:30 p.m. Everything's ready. We file at 9 o'clock. Wade also had a second document open on his laptop. A purchase agreement with Ridgeline Development, LLC. Purchase price, $450,000. Closing date, 30 days after the quitclaim deed was recorded. If Wade couldn't deliver clean title within that window, he owed Ridgeline a $45,000 penalty plus damages. He'd signed that agreement 2 months earlier, before the title had even been fully searched, before verifying that the property was in the estate at all. He assumed it was. He assumed nobody had planned otherwise. Wade had bet nearly $500,000 on a piece of paper that didn't belong to him. He just didn't know it yet. My birthday party started at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The living room was full, maybe 20 people. Neighbors, church friends, 2 of Greg's old business contacts, Kelsey's best friend's family. Nora Beckett from next door to the cabin was there too, sitting near the window with a glass of lemonade and sharp, watchful eyes. In my jacket pocket, folded into a neat square, was the signed acceptance form from the night before. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. It was already done. Greg stood up near the cake table and tapped his glass. The room quieted. He talked about how proud he and Denise were. Then he looked around the room with the careful air of a man making an announcement to witnesses. "As a family, we have some exciting plans for the future." He looked at me. "Right, Iris?" Every face in the room turned toward me. "Thanks, Dad," I said. Nothing more. Greg laughed it off and raised his glass. The conversation resumed. From the corner of my eye, I saw Wade by the front door, typing something fast on his phone with both thumbs. Nora caught my arm as I passed the window. She leaned close, smelling like lavender hand cream. "Your uncle was at the cabin last week with 2 men in suits. They were walking the lot line with a measuring tape." She held my gaze. He brought the buyers to the property before he even had the title. That's how confident he was. After the cake was cut, Greg stood again. His voice louder, more deliberate. Our family has been going through a tough time financially. Harold and Vivian left us the cabin at Cedar Lake. And as a family, we've decided to sell it to secure everyone's future. He looked right at me. Iris understands. She knows this is what's best for all of us. Right, sweetheart? The room waited. Every eye found me. Neighbors who'd known me since I was small. Nora with her lemonade. Kelsey half hidden behind the couch. Denise added, smiling, "It's what responsible families do. We sacrifice for each other." I set my fork on my plate. The clink was the only sound in the room. "I never agreed to sell the cabin, Dad." Greg's smile stayed fixed, but the muscles around his jaw tightened. "She's kidding. Birthday nerves." "I'm not kidding." Wade stepped forward from the doorway. "Come on, Iris. This isn't the time or place." I picked up my glass of water, took a slow sip, set it down. "You're right, Uncle Wade. This isn't the time." I held his gaze. "The time is 8 a.m. tomorrow morning." Silence. The guests left after that. Polite goodbyes, tight smiles. Within 30 minutes, the living room was down to family, Nora, and 2 neighbors who seemed unsure whether to go or stay. Denise waited until the last near stranger had left, then turned on me in the kitchen. "Do you have any idea what your father is going through? He might lose this house, Iris. Our house. The one you sleep in every night. And you're holding on to a cabin you visit on weekends." "I visit every weekend, Mom." "That's not the point." She pressed her palms flat on the counter. "We are a family. Families make decisions together. And if you love this family, you wouldn't need a lawyer to tell you what to do." The room went still. "How do you know about a lawyer?" Denise didn't flinch. "Wade found the business card in your bag last week." My stomach dropped. Not from fear, but from the realization that they'd been going through my things. Nora's voice cut through from the kitchen doorway, even and firm. "That girl has every right to talk to a lawyer, Denise. Vivian would have wanted that." Denise wheeled around. "This is a family matter, Nora." Nora didn't move. She looked at me, then back at Denise. "Vivian was my friend for 40 years. I think I know what she wanted." The silence between them could crack glass. Nora left. The neighbors slipped out behind her. Now it was just the 5 of us. Greg closed the kitchen door. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. He pulled out a chair, sat down, folded his hands on the table. "Here's what's going to happen, Iris. Tomorrow morning, Wade and I go to the county office. We file the paperwork. The cabin sells. You get your share. And we move on as a family." "What's my share?" "50,000. "Out of how much?" Greg didn't answer. Wade, leaning against the door frame, filled the gap. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I looked at my dad. "And if I say no?" Greg's jaw set. "If you fight this, you're on your own. No more help with college. No more living under this roof." The kitchen was very quiet. The faucet dripped once. "You're threatening to kick me out on my 18th birthday? I'm asking you to be part of this family." I pushed back from the table and stood. My voice was steady even though my hands weren't. "I'm part of this family, Dad. I'm the part that keeps promises." I walked past Wade, past Kelsey sitting on the stairs with her knees pulled to her chest, and I went upstairs. I closed my door. I sat on the bed and breathed. Greg thought his deadline was 9 a.m. He didn't know Margaret's was 8 o'clock. The county recorder's office opened at 8 a.m. The fluorescent lights flickered on. A clerk in a blue cardigan unlocked the front counter. Margaret Caldwell was the first person through the door. She approached the counter, presented a certified copy of the Tremaine Family Irrevocable Trust and a lease pendens notice, and asked for them to be recorded against the Cedar Lake property. The clerk reviewed the paperwork, checked the existing title records, and stamped them. Recorded. From that moment forward, anyone who pulled the title on the Cedar Lake cabin would see Notice of Pending Legal Interest, Tremaine Family Irrevocable Trust, Margaret Caldwell, Trustee, Iris Tremaine, Beneficiary. At 8:14 a.m., Margaret called me. "It's done. The lease pendens is recorded. Whatever they bring in will be rejected on chain of title grounds." I was sitting at the kitchen table eating cereal. Greg was upstairs getting dressed. Denise was making coffee. Normal morning sounds. Water running, a closet door, the clink of a belt buckle. At 8:30, Greg and Wade came downstairs together. Greg was wearing a button-down shirt, his business shirt, the one he used to wear to bank meetings. Wade had his folder tucked under his arm. "We'll be back by lunch," Greg said, grabbing his keys. I looked up from my bowl. "Good luck," I said. Greg paused in the doorway and looked at me. Something in my voice, maybe. Or something in my face. Then he turned and walked out. I rinsed my cereal bowl, dried it, set it in the cabinet, and waited. 9:05 a.m. Wade approached the counter at the recorder's office and slid the quitclaim deed across with a confident nod. Greg stood behind him, hands in his pockets, looking around like they'd be in and out in 10 minutes. The clerk took the document, typed the parcel number into the system, read the screen, typed again. Then she stopped. "I can't record this document, sir." Wade leaned forward. "Excuse me. The property title is held under the Tremaine Family Irrevocable Trust. It was recorded in 2020. There's also a lease pendens filed this morning." "That's impossible. My parents own that property." "Sir, the deed was transferred to the trust 6 years ago. The chain of title is clear. This quitclaim doesn't match the current ownership record." Greg stepped up beside Wade. "There's no trust. Our parents never mentioned a trust." The clerk said evenly, "I'd recommend you speak with the trustee listed on the filing. A Margaret Caldwell." Wade's hand went flat on the counter. His face drained. Margaret's name, the same name on the business card they'd found in my bag, was now on a public record they couldn't erase. Greg turned to Wade slowly. "You said this was simple. I didn't know about any trust. You're a real estate agent, Wade. How did you not check the title first?" Wade opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. The clerk said evenly, "Gentlemen, I'll need you to step outside if there's a disagreement." Margaret, seated in the waiting area near the door, watched them leave. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. The call came at 9:22 a.m. I was sitting on the porch watching the neighbor's sprinkler arc back and forth across the lawn. "What did you do?" Greg's voice was tight, shaking. Traffic behind him. He was in the parking lot. "I accepted what Grandpa and Grandma left me. That's all. You went behind our backs with some lawyer we've never heard of. Margaret Caldwell has been the trust attorney for 6 years, Dad. You just never asked." A heavy silence. "This is my parents' property, Iris. I'm their son. I know. And they chose to leave it to me." I kept my voice even. "Not because they didn't love you, but because they didn't trust you with it." The silence that followed was the longest of my life. I counted 3 full arcs of the sprinkler before he spoke. "We'll fight this. You can try. But the trust is irrevocable. That means even I can't dissolve it. There's nothing for anyone to undo." "You don't know what you're talking about." "I do, Dad. I've had 3 months to learn." He hung up. No goodbye. Just a click and dead air. I set the phone on the porch railing. My hands were shaking, not from anger, not from fear, but from the weight of saying those words to my own father. From knowing that the man who taught me to ride a bike when I was 6 was the same man who had just tried to sell my grandmother's home out from under me. I sat there until the shaking stopped. It took a while. Then my phone buzzed again. An unfamiliar number. A man's voice, brisk and corporate. "Miss Tremaine? This is Carter Briggs from Ridgeline Development. We need to talk." Carter Briggs explained they had a purchase agreement with Wade Tremaine for the Cedar Lake property. He had guaranteed clean title. They'd just been informed there was a lease pendens on the parcel. "Mr. Briggs, my uncle does not own that property. He never did. The cabin and the land have been held in an irrevocable trust since 2020. I'm the sole beneficiary." A pause. Papers shifting on the other end. He represented himself as the heir. Representation doesn't create ownership. "I'd recommend you discuss this with him, and possibly with your own attorney." A longer pause. "Ms. Tremaine, is there any possibility of a sale? We'd be prepared to make a competitive offer directly to the trust. The property is not for sale." His voice hardened slightly. "Then we'll be pursuing our remedies against Mr. Tremaine. Within the hour, Margaret confirmed to Ridgeline's legal team what I'd already told Carter. The trust was valid, Wade had no authority, and the purchase agreement was executed based on a misrepresentation of ownership. Ridgeline's response was immediate. They were pursuing Wade for breach of contract, the $45,000 penalty clause, plus damages. That afternoon, Margaret called with one more piece of information. Her voice was careful but direct. Iris, the quitclaim deed Wade tried to file included a notary stamp. The stamp doesn't match any registered notary in the county. It appears to be forged. I closed my eyes. That's a felony, isn't it? In this state? Yes. My uncle hadn't just tried to steal my cabin. He'd committed a crime to do it. Greg came home at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, moving through the front door like a man carrying something invisible and very heavy. Denise was already in the kitchen, arms crossed, face blotched. I was at the dining table. I didn't get up. Greg sat down across from me and stared at the table for a long time. I'm going to lose this house, Iris. His voice was flat, emptied out. The bank is on me for $180,000. The store is gone. That cabin was supposed to be our way out. I know you're struggling, Dad. I'm sorry about the business. Then help us. The cabin was never your way out. It was Grandpa and Grandma's gift to me. A gift? For what? You're 18. What does an 18-year-old need with a lakefront cabin? It's not about what I need. It's about what they wanted. Denise stepped in from the kitchen doorway. They were old, Iris. They weren't thinking clearly at the end. They were thinking clearly enough to hire a lawyer 6 years before they died. Greg slammed his palm on the table. I'll contest the trust. A voice came through my phone. I'd called Margaret before Greg walked in and left the line open on speaker. Mr. Tremaine, Margaret said, steady and professional. Contesting an irrevocable trust established 6 years before the grantor's deaths, with full legal capacity documented and witnessed, will cost you more in legal fees than the property is worth. I'd strongly advise against it. The kitchen was silent. The faucet dripped. Greg looked at me. Really looked. And for the first time, I saw something I'd never seen in my father's eyes before. Not anger. Recognition. 2 hours later, Wade called the house. Greg picked up in the living room. I was in the hallway, close enough to hear every word through the thin wall. Ridgeline is suing me. Wade's voice was stripped raw. $45,000 in penalties, plus damages. They're saying I committed fraud. Greg's reply was cold. Did you? I thought we owned it, Greg. You're a real estate agent. You do title searches for a living. How did you not check? I assumed. You assumed? And now I'm sitting here with nothing because you assumed. You wanted the money too. But I didn't forge a notary stamp, Wade. A long silence. I just found a stamp and that's forgery. You know that's forgery. Wade's breathing got heavier. I need a lawyer. So do I, Greg said. Don't call this house again until you've talked to one. He hung up. I heard him sit on the couch. The springs creaked. Then nothing. I went upstairs. Kelsey's door was open. She was sitting on her bed, eyes wide. Is Uncle Wade in trouble? Yeah, Kels. He is. Is Dad? I sat on the edge of her bed. Dad made bad choices. Uncle Wade made worse ones. She nodded slowly, processing it the way 15-year-olds do. Not fully understanding, but knowing enough to be scared. I went to my room and looked out at the street. A dog walker passed. A sprinkler hissed. The world went on. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel satisfied. I felt like someone who had just walked through a fire and hadn't yet checked to see what got burned. Over the next 3 weeks, the consequences fell like dominoes. Ridgeline filed a civil suit against Wade for breach of contract, misrepresentation of title, and the $45,000 penalty plus an additional $60,000 in damages. He signed for the certified complaint on a Tuesday. The county district attorney's office received a referral from the recorder's office regarding the forged notary stamp. An investigator was assigned. Wade's real estate license was suspended pending the outcome. His income stopped. Word traveled through the town. Not because I said anything. Court filings are public record, and Ridgeline's lawsuit named the Cedar Lake property by parcel number. The neighbors at the lake read the local paper. By the second week, the story had made its way through the Rotary Club, the church parking lot, and the checkout line at Hanson's Market. Wade called me once. I answered. Iris, please. Can you ask your lawyer to drop the lease pendants? If the title is cleared, I might be able to negotiate something with Ridgeline, reduce the penalty. The lease pendants protects my property, Uncle Wade. It stays. Your grandparents would be ashamed of you. I let the sentence sit for a moment. Then I said quietly, my grandparents are the ones who set this up. They chose this. They chose me. I don't think shame is what they'd feel. He hung up. I set my phone down and looked at the wall. There was a framed photo of Grandpa Harold on my desk, the one from the summer I was 12, both of us standing by the fence we fixed. I left it where it was. Greg didn't contest the trust. Instead, he did what he should have done 2 years earlier. He sold the building supply store at a loss, but enough to negotiate a repayment plan with the bank. The house stayed, barely. The savings didn't. Denise went back to work for the first time in a decade, taking a position at a pharmacy on Lincoln Avenue. When neighbors asked, she said she wanted to stay busy. Nobody believed that, but nobody pushed. Greg and I didn't speak for 2 weeks after that morning. The house was quiet in a way that felt permanent, like the silence had weight. Nora Beckett brought me pie one afternoon, apple, still warm. Your parents made their choices, she said, setting the tin on my desk. But they're still your parents. Don't carry their shame. That's theirs. Then Kelsey called one evening, voice small. I don't understand everything that happened. But I'm sorry they put you through this. My throat tightened. Thanks, Kels. Are you okay? I'm getting there. I drove to the cabin on a Saturday morning in late April. The dogwoods along the lake road were blooming, white and pale pink against the dark water. I unlocked the front door with the same key Grandpa gave me when I was 14. In case you ever need to get in when we're not here. I didn't know then that he meant permanently. The cabin smelled the same. Pine and old books and that sweet faint something I'd never been able to name. I think now it might be the wood itself. Decades of sun and rain soaked into the walls. I walked through every room. The kitchen table Grandpa built, still solid, still level. Grandma's bookshelves, organized by color. The bedroom where she read to me when I was small. The porch where Grandpa and I watched the lake turn gold. In the desk drawer by the window, I found an envelope. My name on the front in Grandpa Harold's handwriting. Margaret had told me it would be there. She'd been saving it for after the trust was settled. I opened it carefully. One page written in blue ink, his handwriting getting looser toward the bottom, the way it always did when he was tired. He told me he knew his sons would try to sell the cabin. He didn't blame them. Greg was his boy, and he loved him, but Greg never understood the difference between something that has value and something that's valuable. He said he chose me not because I was perfect, but because I was the one who asked whether the roof needed patching before I ever asked what the place was worth. The last line said, "Take care of it. It took care of you first." I folded the letter. I sat on the porch. I breathed. Margaret called the following week. The lease pendants could now be withdrawn. Once cleared, the property record would show the trust as sole owner. Clean. No encumbrances. No clouds. Wade had settled with Ridgeline, paying the $45,000 penalty out of a loan. The deal was dead. The district attorney's office was still reviewing the forged notary stamp. He could face a misdemeanor, possibly a felony. His license remained suspended indefinitely. There's one more thing, Margaret said. In the trust documents, your grandparents designated a separate educational fund. $50,000, earmarked specifically for your college expenses. It's been accruing interest for 6 years. The current balance is just over $58,000. My eyes stung. $50,000. The same number Greg had offered as my share of the sale. The same number Wade had dangled like a bribe. My grandparents had already set it aside. Quietly. Without telling anyone. Iris, are you there? Yeah. My voice cracked, just barely. I'm here. Your grandparents would be proud. I just kept a promise, Margaret. I enrolled at Ridgemont Community College that week, environmental science with a minor in forestry. The campus was 20 minutes from the cabin, closer than my parents' house. Under current address on the housing forms, I wrote the cabin's address for the first time. It felt like coming home. Because it was. I asked Greg and Denise to meet me at the coffee shop on Birch Street. Neutral ground. Not the house, not the cabin, somewhere public, somewhere calm. They arrived together. Greg was wearing a flannel I hadn't seen in years. One of Grandpa's, I realized. Denise clutched her purse tight against her side, the way she held things when she was nervous. We ordered. I waited until the cups were on the table. I love you, I said. Both of you. I need you to know that, because what I'm about to say might not sound like it. Denise's jaw tightened, but she nodded. The cabin is not for sale. Not now. Not ever. I won't be made to feel guilty for keeping a promise I made to Grandma. A promise she trusted me to keep because she didn't think anyone else would. I paused. I'm not cutting you out of my life. But if we're going to have a relationship, it has to be built on respect. Not on what I can give you financially. Not on guilt. Denise started to speak. We just wanted what was. Then start by being honest about what happened. You tried to sell something that wasn't yours. You threatened to kick me out. You went through my bag. She closed her mouth. Greg still hadn't looked up. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. I don't know how to fix this. You don't have to fix it today. I stood. I left enough cash for all 3 coffees. I'll call you Sunday. He nodded. One small nod. I walked out into the sunlight. It was the most I could hope for right now. And it was enough. Kelsey showed up at the cabin on a Sunday afternoon in May, carrying a pizza box and wearing the oversized hoodie she'd had since 8th grade. I brought lunch, she said. Hope you like pepperoni. Always. We sat on the porch with paper plates on our laps and the pizza box between us. The lake was still. A heron stood in the shallows near the dock, perfectly motionless, waiting for something below the surface. Kelsey ate slowly. She wasn't there for pizza. I didn't know about any of it, she said finally. Mom and Dad never told me. I know. Was I part of the problem? I looked at her. 15. Thin-shouldered. Still growing into whoever she'd become. She hadn't chosen any of this. She hadn't asked to be the favorite. She didn't know the attention they gave her was taken from somewhere else. You were a kid, Kels. We both were. She nodded and pulled a piece of cheese off her slice. It's really beautiful here, she said, looking out at the water. Grandma used to say the same thing every single time she sat in that chair. Kelsey glanced at the empty chair beside mine, Grandpa's chair, the one with the armrest he'd sanded smooth. Can I come back sometimes? Anytime. She leaned her head against my shoulder just for a moment. Then she sat up and took another bite. We didn't talk about our parents. We didn't talk about trusts or lawsuits or forged documents. We talked about her school project, about the heron, about whether the dock needed new planks this summer. The cabin didn't just protect property. It made space for something new to start. Early June, 6 a.m. I was on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the mist lift off Cedar Lake. The pines were sharp against a pale sky. A loon called somewhere out on the water. 2 long notes, then silence. I didn't win against my family. There's no winning when the people who hurt you are the people who were supposed to protect you. You don't get a trophy for surviving something that should never have happened in the first place. But I kept a promise. And for the first time in my life, I was standing somewhere that belonged to me. Not because I fought for it, but because 2 people loved me enough to plan for exactly this. They saw the storm before I did. They built the shelter before I knew I'd need one. My grandparents couldn't stop my parents from being who they are. They couldn't make Greg less desperate or Denise less afraid. They couldn't keep Wade from chasing money that wasn't his. But they could make sure I had ground to stand on. Literally. I thought about Grandpa's letter. The difference between something that has value and something that's valuable. This cabin had both. But only one of them could be measured. And my family spent 2 years focused on the wrong one. I sipped my coffee. The mist cleared. The lake turned blue. If you're listening to this, and you feel like nobody's in your corner, I want you to hear me. Sometimes the people who protect you aren't the ones standing in front of you. Sometimes they planned for you years ago, quietly, without telling anyone. And sometimes all you have to do is show up, sign the paper, and keep the promise. Peace doesn't come from revenge. It comes from standing on something solid and knowing you built your life on it. That's my story.